I'm going to be a little shorter, I think. Actually, I didn't have a ladder. I look at my career path as sort of the Texas two-step. I did a lot to the side. I did some back. I went forward. I really changed around. And if you look at my path, or at least my career, it's been multiple careers. I'm a mid-career hire within the federal government, but I've really jumped from academia to consultant work to state government, and it has not been sort of a direction that I knew I was even going in. I think for me, it was really looking at getting experience. I must be bored pretty easily because after about 5 years, I need a new challenge. And so it was trying to look at ways to get that challenge and to really sort of see the big picture. Some people tend to focus each time. They go smaller and smaller, more into the detail. My career path, each step I did or each new position was broader and broader, and it was getting me, it was really more of that enlightening of how you put the big picture together. To me, it was all about staying challenged.
Good morning. A couple of years ago, my daughter and I were on a 737 heading to the air show out at Oshkosh when she turned to me and she said, "Mom, do you realize the last time we flew together we jumped out?" And that was true. It was a first for both of us, but a few months earlier we had parachuted together. I say that for a couple of reasons, and I'll get to them. As a pilot, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and that is typically the preferred route. But I can tell you that hasn't been my path at all. I have not taken one direct route to get where I am today, and I am extremely grateful I didn't, because I've had some really wonderful adventures, experiences, and personal fulfillment along the way. I would recommend that you take what I call side trips. Keep your mind open to opportunities. Keep your eyes wide open to challenges that you might not ordinarily want to take on. But if there's something out there that looks interesting to you, looks appealing to you, looks like you are going to have some personal or professional growth, go for it. There are lots of challenges right here at zero altitude. You don't have to jump out of a plane. I'm not recommending it necessarily unless you want to. But keep your eyes open for things that you want to try. When I was first out of college, I was an 8th grade English teacher in Wilmington, Massachusetts. And during that time, I took a year off and got a master's degree in education, went back and taught for a couple more years. And during that time, there had been a number of thoughts that kept coming back. And one of those thoughts was wanting to fly. So I got a part-time job in a restaurant as a hostess in order to pay for my flying lessons. And I did what really mattered to me. I wanted to get a pilot's license, so I did. I didn't know any pilots. I didn't know where to begin. So in those days, I turned to the yellow pages and looked up and found a place, a flight school at Hanscom. As time went on, I had an opportunity to go to law school, and that was something else. And I would say, listen to those little voices or your gut or whatever it is you call it. If something keeps coming back to the surface, it's probably something that matters to you. It's probably something that will give you that personal sense of satisfaction to at least examine it and see whether or not it is possible, and most things are. So I went to law school. While there, I sought an internship at the FAA's legal office in Burlington and loved it. I loved being there. I never left. That was 30-some years ago. The challenges were wonderful. There was an air traffic control strike the year I graduated from law school, and they were hiring another attorney, and I was there. So I worked there as a staff attorney and kept my eyes open, my ears open, tried to get to know as many people as I could and to know what it was they were doing. The legal issues were involved every line of business with the personnel kinds of matters and that sort of thing, as well as the more technical aerospace regulations that we had to deal with and so forth. I told my boss that someday I wanted his job, and it was done respectfully, and he was way older than I was and certainly would find retirement at some point in the near future at the time I said it. And I mention that because I think in letting what you want be known to people who might be able to help you can be really, really useful. So the day came when he did retire, and I applied for his position and was selected. Loved being the regional counsel and did that for 13 years and thought I'd do it until I eventually retired. But a mentor encouraged me to look at applying for the regional administrator's job. And I really struggled. And again, it was going back to that comfort zone, and are you going to put yourself out there and take the challenge? I evaluated a whole lot of factors and decided, yes, I would apply for it, and I was selected. And unlike Pam, I have never been bored in the FAA. I just find there's just so much for me to learn and so many really interesting people who have great expertise who I can learn from that it's worked great. And I've been in this position 11 years, and there's no sign of me leaving it, so I don't know what's next.
Thank you, Amy. Michelle?
Yeah. So I have a very short path to where I am today. As Anne said, I came to the Volpe Center when I was an undergrad as a student, and I got involved in a great program here, crashing trains, and I loved it, and I got to do all this great fun stuff. And then I decided a few years ago that I needed to branch out within the Volpe Center. So I started kind of seeing what projects were interesting and what I could still do and grow myself as a mechanical engineer. So I did that. I got on another project and started learning more, and then it was like all of a sudden the floodgates opened and there was like this whole other world of things to learn and things to do, and I had been so kind of narrowly focused, and I loved what I was doing when I was narrowly focused, but then all of a sudden I had all these ambitions that I never knew I had before. I was going to be a technical expert and run the world and, do all these great things. And I think I kind of got a little ahead of myself. So I went from kind of this one narrow thing to wanting to do all these things, and it kind of became that I couldn't do what I wanted to do at the Volpe Center, and I kind of started saying, well, I need to branch out, I need to try new things. I had a mentor here who facilitated me making that decision. She said, a lot of people who are successful at the Volpe Center go somewhere else. They go somewhere else within government, they go somewhere else consulting or whatever, and then they come back later, and that's one career path that people here have. So I kind of started putting feelers out there and looking at what was available, and I was asked to apply for my current job, which is a completely different job than a mechanical engineer at the Volpe Center. And this is hard to describe to my friends and family because I'm still in the same building that I was in. But it's a totally different job. It's I can make it a little technical, but it's a lot of managing, and I work with all railroaders. I work with all men. They're all 55 or older. So it's
Nothing wrong with men 55 or older.
No. I had dinner with my dad last night. But so I kind of had this thing where I said, well, I want to change. So I went and I interviewed for this position, and I was flying to New Orleans, and I landed in New Orleans, and I got the position, and I was on the phone, and I said, oh, oh no. I said, I can't accept this. Give me a minute. I need a day. And I wigged out, and I didn't know what to do. And I said, I don't know if I can manage. I don't know if I want to leave all the great things that are the Volpe Center. I don't know if I want to leave mechanical engineering. And then my husband said, well, you don't have to do it, but, why not? So, so I said, okay, I'll do it, and if I can do it, I can do it. If not, I'll, come and beg Ann for a job. So I just kind of made this huge leap to something that was entirely uncomfortable and did my best, and so far it's working.
So far, she's doing a terrific job. She undersells herself. And it occurs to me I was probably supposed to answer the question a little myself. Some of you have heard this story. When I finished my graduate work at MIT, I started doing a real networking job, and all paths left to the Massachusetts Port Authority. And like Pam, I have about a 5-year attention span. Whoops, I've been here 7 years. And each time I got bored, something else opened up. And shortly after our first child was born, I went in and said, I'd really like to work part-time. And the director said no. And I don't deal well with no. And I said, why? He said, because we just fired your boss and we want you to be port director. I said, oh, okay. I was 35 at the time. I had no clue. And it was the best job in the world. I would still be there if it had been an option, but I got caught in Massachusetts politics, spent a year in Washington running the National Intermodal Commission, learning about passenger transportation, because up to that point I'd done only freight. And when I still had 2 small children in Boston, and I said, I really can't keep commuting to Washington. They said, well, why don't you go to the Volpe Center? I said, what's the Volpe Center? Now, mind you, I'd spent 20 years in transportation in Boston at that point, so the world's best kept secret still. And I figured it would be a good place from which to job hunt to find a real job. And that was 19 and a half years ago. So when people talk about career path, it's sort of a foreign concept to me. My advice would be just keep watching the doors that open in front of you. Often when change comes along, particularly if it's change that you haven't sought out, it's possible to spend a lot of time looking regretfully over your shoulder at what's no longer there, and if instead you're facing forward and looking at where there are opportunities often show up in the most unexpected places. So with that, let's move on to some individual questions, and as I said, if people want to comment on other people's answers, please feel free to do that. Let's start with Mary Beth. What qualities do you have that have been central to your success as a leader? And did you take specific steps to develop those qualities within yourself? You spoke to some of that in your first answer.
Yes. So I have a lot more to say about that. This question was really interesting and challenging for me because it forced me to really reflect on my career and myself. And I think it's so important as a leader to have a really good sense of yourself. So it's something I try to do all the time, but when it's in a concentrated question, it's a little bit more challenging. And we all read tons of leadership books, and you can come up with a list of qualities that are really important to any leader, and there's a lot of debate about what those qualities should be. But in terms of myself, the innate qualities that I really believe have helped me the most as a leader, and that they were something I think I was just born with. I just remember always having them. I've certainly have strengthened them as I've grown older and had more experience. But the first and most important, I think, innate quality that I have is optimism. And I just see the world. I have to pull myself back. I tend to see the world with rose-colored glasses. So the quality I've had to work on developing to counteract that is realism. And I'll get to that a little bit later. But in terms of optimism, it helps me to see, to be creative, to be innovative, to be hopeful, to be confident, and to see paths that maybe some other people might not see. Because like Ann, I don't really ever say no. If someone says to me, we can't do that, it's a cry for me to just decide, no, I'm going to prove to you why we can do it, and I'm going to grab a couple of people and we'll succeed. So